Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue the Budapest Eurasia Forum 2024 conference. Earlier today, we had a discussion on economics and sustainable prosperity, and now it is time to move on to the multilateral cooperation panel titled Adapting to Change, the next chapter of multilateralism in an ever-changing world. The panel will discuss strategies in enhancing the adaptability of multilateral frameworks to effectively address evolving geopolitical, economic, climate and technological changes. Our distinguished panelists will address key questions, including how can multilateral cooperation be re-envisioned to address today's global challenges effectively? First, let me invite Mr. Márton UGRÓSDY, Deputy State Secretary and Head of the Political Director's Office of the Cabinet Office of the Prime Minister, who will moderate the Fireside Chat dedicated to multilateral cooperation. Thank you, Mr. UGRÓSDY, for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am also pleased to invite on stage Mr. Walter L. CHRISTMAN, Chairman and Founding Director of the Global Challenges Forum Foundation. Mr. CHRISTMAN is a globally acclaimed advocate for fostering next-generation resilience through innovative international partnerships. His 30-year U.S. government career included service in the Armed Forces, Congress, Pentagon, State Department and the White House, with over a decade as a diplomat in Geneva. Mr. CHRISTMAN, welcome. Mr. UGRÓSDY, Mr. CHRISTMAN, have a nice chat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this fireside chat, even though we don't have a fireplace up here, but we'll try to keep it interesting. And usually when you do fireside chats, they're in the night and you have wine and all the other accessories, but we'll try to keep it serious this time. And for this conversation on where the world is headed, how we can foster international cooperation, I have an excellent partner here on stage, Walter CHRISTMAN. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. And just before we get started with the substantial part, you just came back from India, where you have launched your new book, which is exactly focusing on this topic, that how we can foster global cooperation based on empowering youth and other groups who could bring a great added value to a future world, which is focused on cooperation instead of competition. So could you please tell us a few words of how it went and what the book is about?
Yes, I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much. I did return just from Mumbai, where we launched my book, Building Global Resilience, A Call to Action. And it is focused on supporting an initiative of our foundation called 1 Million Youth Leaders for Sustainable Development Beyond 2030. And as many of you know, the UN has, in multilateral arena, the UN's Sustainable Development Goals to 2030. And I said, well, that's great. So who's doing it after that? And what we concede is that the goals will not be met. But I define the end state of sustainable development to be global resilience and to be formed by a new approach to global partnerships from bottom up, reaching top down, with a focus on youth empowerment at community level through impact finance, to be able to promote local sustainable development solutions that can be role models and examples networked worldwide, supported by a global resilience university. So that's what I went out to promote. We also launched a branch in India and Delhi to cover the 4 parts of the country, north, south, east, west, which would be Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore and Calcutta. And that's to reach out to the rest of the world in a global hub, but that's where I just came from. So thank you for asking.
Sure, it's always a pleasure to learn about these new initiatives and new opportunities which can help us to overcome all the problems that we face today. And staying with problems and staying with the main topic of this conference and the previous interventions, I think one of the main messages, one of the key takeaways is that the world is getting more complicated, the world is getting more chaotic, and the rules we had so far, which haven't been serving us that well, to be very honest, in the last couple of years, are being changed to something else. And what that something else will be key to how we can shape the future. And on that issue, you do have a few ideas, you do have a few proposals. So I was just wondering that how do you see our era when it comes to moving from these very simple structures to the chaotic landscape that is awaiting us just around the corner?
Thank you. I've I'm a strategic planner by trade. I worked for 5 secretaries of defense, personally launched 7 Secretary of Defense initiatives, 3 of which were endorsed by 2 U.S. presidents. And what I've discovered in that process is the defect of American thinking is to ask what are our goals and what are our objectives, which is a perfect way to climb a ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Right now, and with great bipartisan consensus, that's what the United States is setting out to do, to divide the world into 2 competitive blocks and optimize our place within it, and that's the ladder against the wrong wall. A more useful approach is to consider the nature of the age in which we are living, which this conference exemplifies. And if you consider the nature of the age in which we're living, we've gone from, in my own lifetime, simple in the Cold War of 2 blocks tied to mutual assured destruction, to complicated in the immediate aftermath, in which I was deeply involved in relationship of the Partnership for Peace and reaching out to secure, in this part of the world, democratic control of the armed forces. My early career was to prevent a previous American mistake, which led to a development model in Latin America that left everywhere military dictatorships. And we did not want to see that replicated here. So we launched that with a purpose to be able to bring together another approach that would secure, and I love the phrase, sustainable prosperity, sustainable development. And in that respect, I left at that part of my career to Geneva. I spent 12 years in the Pentagon, spent another 12 years in Geneva as a diplomat in sustainable development, UN. So I have 2 multilateral experiences, NATO and the United Nations. And that became the era of complexity. The central bank governor yesterday said we're entering in the era of complexity. I think it's optimistic. I think we might be entering the era of chaos. And so what I'd like to be able to do is to propose some antidotes to that, and I'll follow on with your questions.
I think if you look at the current state of the world, you see that the institutional framework, which was shaped after the Second World War and also in the last couple of years with the redivision of power and balance in the world, the current system cannot really address all the questions that all of us are asking, that where we're going to, is conflict inevitable? Why cannot we coexist together? And to that, of course, it's necessary to overcome both the Washington and the Beijing consensuses. So what's your alternative to that? How we can overcome these problems?
Well, this is, as the governor said yesterday, a time of special significance, and a decade of creativity, although he put up 2025 to 2050, and I like that, the forward thinking. A new European Commonwealth, transitioning the European Union from the idea of being the United States of Europe to a Commonwealth, is transitioning from the idea of Europe being a global power to being a global partner. And the strength of partnership is what needs to be reinvested in and taken on. The Prime Minister spoke of a need for a new paradigm of connectivity, of horizontal networks that basically replace vertical assignments. And in that, I would like to propose the idea that this new paradigm of connectivity be what I would call network sovereignty. And network sovereignty would stand apart from open society, for example. It's a bottom-up approach that values each nation, small nation, and we've heard a lot about that, their unique contribution to the world. But to join together in network sovereignty is to link not only mutual interests, but on top of that, mutual obligations to cooperate for a shared common good for all humanity. And small nations can lead in that better in many respects than the big powers, because the big powers have bigger agendas, but at the same time, the power we see in small nations is bonded together in a collective consensus. And so what I would say, we have had the Washington Consensus, which promoted liberalization and free trade everywhere, did a lot of good. Globalization lifted a lot of people out of poverty. 400 million Chinese actually participated in that respect. We also have the Beijing Consensus, a state-led approach to growth. Both of them have their advantages. Both of them tend to lead a little bit to dependency in regard to smaller states participating. I would suggest to you that the middle path, the empowering path, should be called the Budapest Consensus, which is basically to bring forth a proclamation that says we too can contribute, and we invite others to join us in that process. Now, I'm an old soldier. I started out, I'm 67 years old. I came first here to Budapest 35 years ago. Soviet troops were still here, and began this process young in my career of opening up the relations in Eastern Europe. My son's a Navy SEAL. He served recently in Iraq. He came back and I said, so son, what'd you learn? Well, Dad, I learned common sense is not common. And what we heard Prime Minister yesterday say, that there is not a common consensus in Europe around the ideas that are emanating from Budapest. And I'm saying, well, okay, common sense is not common. Declare yourself the capital of common sense and invite everybody to come and agree. That is, in my mind, the Budapest Consensus.
I think it's a really good start because common sense obviously gone missing in many capitals these days, unfortunately. And it's our mission, and this is why this conference is so important, that it's trying to bring this approach back to not only the national, but also the international conversation. What really caught my attention in your previous remark was that how you were juxtaposing the globalists and globalization. That we have to recognize the results and the achievements of globalization, like how it lifted people out of poverty, but maybe dissociated from the overall political message, which is very uniform, which has this kind of a vertical approach, a top-down approach when it comes to how individual nations are organizing their internal lives and international relationships. And how can you find this delicate balance between national identity, national sovereignty, and the need for global cooperation? Because so far, most of the theorists have been talking about this as a zero-sum game, whether in your concept it seems to be much more comprehensive and much more positive at the end of the day.
Well, the Prime Minister yesterday said that politics is not the domain of knowledge. Politics is the domain of application. And I think that in that respect, that the leadership that is being shown is necessary to define the nature of how we respond to the emerging challenges, whether it's complexity or chaos. One of my favorite strategic thinkers is Greta Thunberg. Now, Greta Thunberg started out at the age of 15 on the cover of Time magazine, basically denouncing all her elders and saying, you know, we will never forgive you. She's changed her tune a little bit today. And what she says to her generation is, we are the ones we're waiting for. If that's not leadership, I don't know what is. And so what it means is that we need to embrace the challenges where we find them. The reason my book is focused on building a new model of global partnership is to combine all the top-down efforts of the multilateral institutional systems, whether they're the EU, NATO, UN, and all the rest, to which seldom get to the bottom, and when they do, they're perverse very often, as Hungary would testify. To reverse that model, a new model of global partnership, and build from the bottom up, and it basically taking the niche roles of empowered individuals at the community level, enabling them with impact finance and the attributes of skills in developing a new global mindset. When I say that we're looking for 1 million youth leaders for sustainable development beyond 2030, and I might like to change it to sustainable prosperity beyond 2030, I really like the thinking around here. That's basically a function of a new global mindset. And what that means is, for the next generation, is actually a culture change. Basically, what we're handing them is a broken world rapidly disintegrating, whether it's climate change that's disintegrating us, or it's the social media in which injects from hostile states or groups to try to foment hate and discontent among us. Or, while much of this conference has been optimistic about AI, there's also a dark side coming from the dark web. That'll be empowered too. And it has the power to change every one of our lives by robbing everybody in this room. So the movement in the direction of a brighter, more complex world isn't sure. At the same time, hope is not a method. And what we need to do is pre-plan and build to the future. And I look to the next generation to strengthening them to think about their role for the remainder of the 21st century and building it out. So what we're looking at in these youth empowerment concepts is basically different leaders as adults. And that can begin here. And one of the things that I really believe that we're going to need to see, if you look on in the calendar, you know, the central bank governor said that this is the age of significance and that this is the decade of creativity. Who cannot see that we're going to need to reintegrate Russians into European society? And that needs to come about with youth, Ukrainian, Hungarian, East European, Russian. That needs to begin thinking about it now. It's a known. And there are a whole lot of things that we can begin to build a consensus around, the Budapest consensus. And Budapest needs to be the capital of common sense, even if it's not common. So I kind of see that as the Budapest consensus being the middle way to stake it out. But there needs to be some principles for it. And the first principle is global partnership. The second principle is network sovereignty. And the third is a little bit of a statement that says we resist and reject efforts to divide the world into two hostile blocks, two competitive blocks, because all the other challenges are undermined by that. We don't make any progress on any of the global challenges if that's how we proceed down the world. And in terms of into the future, that's not what we need to be handing off to our children and the next generation. So to a certain extent, standing up and saying, we're the ones we're waiting for, and invite the common cause. So I would propose that the next, this is the 100th anniversary of this event, and the 101st is the first of the next 100 years, that it be a global signature event, that it invite into a shared open space the opportunity for people from everywhere to deliberate on the ideas. Well, what would a Budapest consensus look like? And do we agree? Can we build a shareable world around partnership? And invite all parties to the discussion. I think that there is optimism to be had in that respect. And so that's kind of a little bit where I'm leaning, but I am mindful of the fact that I'm in a kind of a new place. You know, US President Harry Truman said, if you want to understand power in the world, there are two groups of people you need to talk to. One are the generals, the other is the bankers. I've known in my life hundreds of generals. I've never known a single banker. I couldn't even figure out why I was invited here. So I discovered after getting here that actually I speak their language, they speak mine. That's a delightful discovery. And I feel so privileged to be here and address you in that context. But I do think that the future that we hold is to be decided. War is a choice. We're all humans. We don't have to choose war. But peace is not easily attained, but it's worth working for.
And I think that's the last point I would like to elaborate before our time runs out. We've seen many of similar initiatives focusing on cooperation, focusing on mutual respect, bringing people together to iron differences. What makes the Budapest consensus unique and how we can get started? You talked about how we could convert this conference into something which brings leading people from all around the world together. And I cannot emphasize this enough because it's very uncommon to have people from all around the world together in the same conference from talking about the same topics, because we grew to hate each other once again, which is not leading us anywhere. So what would be your call for action? How we can get started? What are the results that we should be looking at and how soon we should attain them?
I would offer that it should be the output of the event. But I'll give you my thought. And my thought is that a Budapest proclamation that basically declares the first order of business for the welfare of the planet is to formulate a new policy and process and action for global partnership. And anything that undermines that is working against the common interests of all humanity. And they should pay a price for it, no matter who they are. And in that respect, there is a trusteeship of a covenant of mutual obligation. And that covenant of mutual obligation is to say, we all hold a bond together on one planet, and we have obligations to each other that exceed our own interests. And every one of us can make the world great.
You are very efficient, so maybe there's time for another after the last question. And it's going to be a bit more general. Apologies for that. Do you think it's still possible to stop the fragmentation of the world? Because the vertical element, which tends to order the world into two opposing blocks, us and them, seems to be very strong at the moment. And all this conference, all the panels, all the keynote speeches yesterday were focusing on how we can avoid that, how we can maintain prosperity, how we can maintain cooperation. So we're clearly swimming against the tide at the moment, but I think we both agree that it's worth swimming against the tide, but how we can reassure ourselves that we're on the right path.
Well, one, the conference inspired me by the depth and breadth of the vision, and it discouraged me a little bit by the defeatism. And it basically, you know, leaders make themselves. Choices are human. But I'd like to revert to a fellow American. And one of my favorites is Henry Ford. And Henry Ford said, if you believe you can, or you believe you can't, either way, you'll be right. And I think that you just need to step forward boldly in the capital of common sense, call the world to its senses, and drive on.
And I think on that point, we should finish because we're out of time, but it really comes back again to what the Prime Minister said yesterday, that politics is the art of application. So it's time to apply all these ideas into practice, and we're looking forward to this process. I think we will be here to have this discussion, and I would also like to thank the organizers for bringing all of us together to discuss these issues here today. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.
Indeed, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. UGRÓSDY and Mr. CHRISTMAN, for this outstanding discussion. It was a valuable experience to all of us. Now, after this brilliant fireside chat, without fire, discussing it is a time to move on to the panel discussion of this session. Let me call the moderator of the panel discussion, Ms. Elena Rovenskaya, Program Director at International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. Ms. Rovenskaya is leading a team of more than 100 scientists who work on new systems analytical methods which enable higher levels of agility to support policy and societal decision-making. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Let me also invite the discussants of the panel. First, please welcome Mr. Levente Horváth, founder and director of Eurasia Center at the John Foy Neumann University. Mr. Horváth previously served as the chief advisor to the governor of the Central Bank of Hungary, and he was the Consul General of Hungary in Shanghai. He is actively engaging in various initiatives to strengthen Sino-Hungarian relations. Mr. Horváth, thank you very much. Our second esteemed panelist is Mr. Norkat Kushimov, advisor of the Executive Office of the Astana International Financial Center. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Kushimov served as the Chief Executive Officer at the Asian Financial Services Association. He has extensive experience in senior positions in the area of financial market regulation. Mr. Kushimov, thank you very much. Welcome. It is my utmost pleasure to invite Mr. Yong-Yuk Ryu to stage. Mr. Ryu is a professor of international politics at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. His areas of expertise cover the foreign policies of China, Japan, Korea, and ASEAN, as well as broad regional and global issues. Mr. Ryu's current research projects examine the US-China tech competition, supply chains, and maritime security, Sino-Japanese relations, and the concept of hedging international relations. Thank you very much, Mr. Ryu. I am also pleased to invite on stage our third panelist, fourth panelist, Mr. Dan Wang, Executive Vice President of the Silk Road Fund. Before joining the Silk Road Fund, Ms. Wang worked at the International Department and the Monetary Policy Department of the People's Bank of China. She also served as advisor to the Executive Director for China at the International Monetary Fund. Thank you very much, dear panelists. Ms. Wang, welcome. And let's hear the discussion on multilateral cooperation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you, panelists, for being with us, as well as the audience. Let me begin by congratulating Hungarian National Bank on the 100th anniversary of its existence. It managed to go through the history with many turbulences and successfully accomplish its mission and also go beyond that mission, as we say, or beyond the traditional mission of central banks. So by organizing this wonderful event where we can discuss not only the questions of financial sector and economics, but also geopolitics, as we did yesterday. And now we come to the session where we discuss multilateral cooperation. And of course, as many times it was already mentioned by almost everyone here in this forum, we are facing a crisis of multilateralism, or possibly multiple crises of multilateralism at the moment. So we will discuss those crises a bit, but of course, most useful would be to discuss about the way forward. How can we overcome that? What could be innovative solutions? How can we bring more common sense back to multilateral relationships and institutions? And how can that happen in the interest of Eurasia and Eurasian states, which are, of course, extremely diverse? And this crisis that we are facing not only is very unfortunate, of course, as such, but also it's especially unfortunate because the situation that we face with our planet Earth. Yeah? So as some people conceptualize it, we are facing what is sometimes called polycrisis. So it's a combination of multiple crises: climate change, pollution, the loss of biodiversity. And these are exactly challenges that occur at the global scale. These are planetary challenges. And again, as previous speakers already pointed, they require planetary level solutions. They require global action where exactly efficient multilateralism, efficient multilateral cooperation would be very much needed. And paradoxically, it is not functioning as it should exactly for that purpose. So that is the kind of general framing of our discussion that I would like to propose to our speakers, and also more specifically the question of, as I already said, how can we forge partnerships that, given the current circumstances, can still help us to address those global challenges, in particular through regional cooperation. So we also heard from Prime Minister yesterday and the Governor how different flexible schemes of partnerships and cooperations possibly could be more efficient in achieving those goals. And I would be very curious to hear the perspective of our speakers, which represent very diverse backgrounds and I'm sure very diverse points of view on this topic. And let me start with my first question, and I would like to address it to Mr. Horváth. And exactly continuing on that, we have the system of multilateral organizations, and they are supposed to foster the multilateral cooperation and multilateralism, but they face multiple crises. So they themselves made various proposals on how they could reform themselves. Other stakeholders made proposals. What do you think, from your perspective, from your expertise, what should be the priority areas for reforming multilateral institutions today?
Thank you very much. It is my great honor to be in the Eurasia Forum, and I'm very glad that we are in a very good panel with very good experts of the Eurasia conception. For the question, I would like to start from a global view. We are witnessing a changing of the world order. And in 2019, when there was the first Eurasian Forum, George Matolcsy, the governor of the Central Bank of Hungary, he already said that we are in the dawn of Eurasia. So the Atlantic era is finished. We are witnessing the changing of the world order, and the Eurasia world order is coming. What is the difference between the two world order? Before, it was a unipolar world order, so it was hegemony, and it was led by the Western countries. And now it will became a multipolar world order, where not only the US and the European Union, but China, India, the ASEAN country, etc., they will all be a very important ruler of the world order. But the biggest question is that the Western country who were leading this world order, they can change their mind or not. As we have heard the Prime Minister yesterday, he was mentioning also that there are several civilizations in the world. And every civilization, they have different history, different geography, and different mindset. So maybe their reflection for some question is different. We have to understand each other. And nowadays, we can see that the Western country, they don't really want to understand other civilization. As the Prime Minister has told that maybe sometimes the Western countries, they have a bigger, they are a higher civilization or this kind of attitude. And I wouldn't say that we should reform the institution, but first, we have to change this attitude. Because in 2024, so in this year, the EU, the foreign affairs leader of the EU, in a diplomatic meeting, he was mentioning that the Western countries are a clear garden, and everything is out of the garden is a jungle. So he's saying Asia, Africa, Latin America is a jungle, but we are the garden. We are a nice, pretty, and organized garden, and everything is other than our garden is a jungle. And the diplomatics, they are the gardener, and they have to go to the jungle and fix them. So this means that the European Union and the Western leaders, they still have this kind of idea and thinking about that we are the number one. But we have to change this attitude, because now there are a lot of countries, emerging countries, economically emerging, and this civilization, they are politically and economically free. They have the freedom, and they also want to participate in this world order. But not only in this 1 or 2 years or in this decade, they already asking for reforming this world order in the past 70 years. Next year, we will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Bandung Conference, and it was already about to reforming this world order. So I would like just say, first of all, we have to step out from our Western information bubble. We have to change our attitude from the Western countries, and we have to start to start some dialogues. We have to drop away this kind of blocking system, or to be in a Cold War idea, like we are now in the Cold War 2.0. And then we can talk about that, how to reform or how to change this kind of international and multilateral cooperations.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, starting from really the worldviews and the mindset. Of course, the question is how to change that, or where the change should start, where the chain reaction of change should start. But I will come back to you on more on this question. But now let me go to Mr. Ryu, and continuing on that and on this emerging multipolar world that, again, everyone referred to in this conference. Obviously, one trend is the increasing power of Asia generally, several specific countries in Asia. And what do you think about multilateral institutions that we already have? Are they recognizing this? Are they reforming themselves in that sense? Or are they opposing to that, as Mr. Horvath suggested? And how do you think this should go forward?
Okay, thank you for the kind invitation. My first time to attend this forum, and it's been wonderful. And happy 100th birthday to the MMB. Most Asian countries are exporting economies. And as such, they've benefited greatly from existing multilateral institutions and associated norms such as openness, inclusivity, equality, and non-discrimination. But today, these multilateral institutions and norms are under threat, mainly due to the intensification of great power rivalry and conflict. And here, I see two major challenges. The first one has to do with the emergence of new norm of trust, which thus far has triumphed over all the other existing multilateral norms and principles, the ones that I've mentioned just now. And I think if we want to resuscitate the existing multilateral institutions, we must find ways to reconcile the new norm of trust with existing multilateral norms and principles. The other challenge has to do with the prevalence of egoistic and unilateral behavior by great powers, whether it be United States, China, or Russia, you name them, right? So sometimes I get perplexed and to be honest, find it weird for some Americans or Russians or Chinese point fingers at one another and blame the other for weakening multilateral institutions when I think the blame should be shared across the board. And this kind of egoistic and unilateral behavior by great powers certainly weakens the operation of multilateral institutions and multilateralism itself. Now, how should we respond to all this? I see three main ways to respond. The first one I've already mentioned. We must reconcile the new norm of trust with existing multilateral norms and principles. And that's going to be quite tricky. I think it will take time for this to emerge, this reconciliation to emerge through practices. The second advice or policy prescription is, I think multilateral institutions should be less ambitious today, right? So aim less and try to achieve cooperation, no matter how small it may be, frequently. So I think frequent cooperation, the iteration of very small cooperation can build up social trust among the participants, and that can be the way to go for. And then the last one has to do with, don't be too hung up on multilateralism. It's just one form of achieving interstate cooperation. I think a lot of people would like to go for multilateral cooperation in lieu of something else, but it's just one means of achieving interstate cooperation. There are other ways and modes of achieving interstate cooperation. So don't be too hung up on multilateralism and look for other ways to promote interstate cooperation.
Yeah, thank you. And we will continue the discussion when we discuss the regional cooperation and partnerships indeed. But before we do that, let me come to Mr. Kushimov, who works in the financial sector, in this case, very practical and pragmatic in Kazakhstan with the Astana International Financial Center. But my question would be, how does your institution or the financial sector more generally recognize climate challenge and sustainability challenge? And I know your institution does. And maybe you could tell the audience a bit more on how you see the activities of your institution vis-a-vis these big trends, and what are concrete examples of projects that you undertake in this direction?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Also would like to join my fellow panelists in congratulating Central Bank of Hungary with 100 year of anniversary, and also thanks for inviting me to this conference several times, and I'm pleased to be here once again. I think it's very important to tie together green policy or climate policies and financial policies for several reasons, because personally, as you mentioned, being practical on this area, I don't think you can receive a great achievements or great goals in a climate policy development and execution without it being tied together very tightly, actually, with financial policies as well. Because to execute climate policies correctly, you need to bring fundraising and fund mobilization correctly. So your policy development in the financial area need to actually point in the right direction the whole financial sector to mobilize the funds in that direction. And I think that's very important. And also to service it correctly. So all this standardization, taxonomies, all these projects and initiatives, they actually serve the one sector with another. So it's very important that finance is within this area. So in the AFC, we do recognize that. And then second point that we also recognize is that you need at the very first stage to concentrate the capacity. And that's what actually we've been doing for several years. I think in a later stage, the capacity could be dispersed to have a greater and wider achievements. But at the very beginning, especially in the countries like Kazakhstan, you need to concentrate the capacity. So these two areas, concentrated capacity and a conjunction of both climate and ESG policy development and financial policy development, actually brought some fruits. So we do have several examples of how we cooperate. I think for us, it's not only multilateral, but mostly regional cooperation. This is important. So AFC had a very big role in several projects, and I would give you several examples. One just recently in November this month, and a meeting in Bishkek of Organization of Turk States, which Hungary now also part of. There was a decision made that this institution will establish Green Finance Center Council. Green Finance Council and AFC will act as a working body, as a secretariat permanently for this new institution that joined together Turk states, and Kazakhstan will preside the first as the initiator of this project, and AFC was instrumental behind pushing this project forward in this area. And then that institution will focus on cross-border projects. So all these points that people quite often talk about, like taxonomy, standards, etc., become very important in this area, because you need to bring aligned view to have this cross-border projects implemented and executed. Second, very interesting, I think, examples which could be beneficial for many is a taxonomy, as I mentioned, and Eurasian Economic Union, as you know, Kazakhstan part of. On a high-level meetings, we also put forward the initiatives of establishing a model taxonomy code for climate projects. And again, that is an important project because it makes possible first alignment of all of the countries on this area, so the unified policy development, but also it also enables the cross-border projects. And the climate is cross-border. So most of this project that requires participation of several states. And the third initiative that AFC has a big part of is a Green Investment Principles of Belt and Road Initiative. And we serve as a center, as a Central Asia secretariat for this initiative as well. So I think AFC has the role not only within the country for pushing the both climate and financial development policies forward, but we also had a bigger role in the regional developmental policy issues as well.
Thank you. And again, we will come back to discussing this in greater detail in the next questions. And now let me turn to Ms. Wang, who also represents a financial institution. She is Executive Vice President of Silk Road Fund. And my question is similar. So how is your institution interfacing and feeling this different geopolitical and cooperation trends, and how you react? How do you respond to them? please share with us your experiences.
Okay. So also it's my great pleasure to be here to join the Eurasia Forum. So my first time in Budapest. Is a very nice city, beautiful city. And today the main theme we are discussing is multilateral cooperation, and in the terms of the new era of this kind of world. And Silk Road Fund, we are medium to long-term investment fund. So we invest in many sectors. We call it maybe multi-sectors. So we invest in infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing sector, and financial sector. And in this time, multilateral cooperation is quite important for us. If we talk from microeconomic view, a project, we need equity investment, and we need debt financing, and then we need operator, and then we need EPC contractors. And with all these parties, and we can finish one project like a power station. And for Silk Road Fund, we cooperate with many institutions like MDBs and also other financial institutions, commercial banks, and also those industrial players in the world. And we have invested in more than 70 countries. I think that's a wide range of countries. From the Silk Road Fund's perspective, the cooperation with those institutions and MDBs could have us better understanding of the risk-sharing mechanism, and also better understanding about the international standards. And so, for example, we have just set up a Sustainability Investment Committee and issued our first annual book of sustainability investment in this kind of world. And we invest in renewable energy, and also in some education program, and also in medical and health sector. For the perspective of host countries, so we invested in like roads and airports, and also such kind of transportation and infrastructure could contribute to the economic growth of the host countries. And we invested in medical, in hospitals, and in testing companies, and could, we say, is a kind of healthy Silk Road. And also we invested in education, in special education program, and also K-12 education, and could enhance the accessibility of educational opportunities of those host countries. Without the cooperation, we cannot finish one deal or any one transaction. We mainly do equity investment, but we need also, like I have just said, we need equity financing, and also we need operator, and then we need EPC contractor. For traditional or typical project, we have invested. Usually, we will co-invest with, for example, a very big industrial player and other financial institutions, and then commercial banks will provide debt financing. And sometimes the operator is a local one. Sometimes the EPC contracts, they come from China. And their equipments, they come from both China and also came from other countries. So for an institution like us, multilateral cooperation is quite necessary for us. So I have just said we can't live without the cooperation. And that kind of cooperation could also bring us benefits. So we learn, we cooperate with the host countries and other partners through sharing of risks, and through designing of financing mechanism, and then we can finally reach our goal. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting these very concrete benefits of cooperation, or cooperation as enabling factor for investments that eventually, of course, improve the life of people in all those countries. So cooperation is not just a concept that exists somewhere in the UN system up there, but it has very specific implications for investments in particular. Yeah, and let us now indeed discuss the diversity of different inter-country cooperations. As Mr. Yu already reminded us, multilateral system is not the only system that exists or must exist. As we know, in the last several decades in Eurasia in particular, but not only in Eurasia, multiple very diverse forms of regional partnerships, cooperations, integrations, and so on, different terms are used, have emerged and are emerging also now. They use very different formats, they set very different goals and use very different means to achieve those goals. So this complexity of different regional projects is actually very, very high already. So my question to Mr. Horvath now is, how do you think this complexity, are we able to manage that complexity? Is it aligned with the multilateralism? Are all these different integration or cooperation projects, are they in some sense competing or contradicting each other, or are they able to sort of be mutually reinforcing each other, or at least is that the possibility going forward?
If we are talking about the multilateral institutions, we can see that in the past 20 years there are more and more non-Western multilateral institutions. For example, in these 2 months, there was the US election, and everybody was focusing on the US election. But actually, there were a lot of other things was happening in the multilateral system, such as we had a BRICS meeting, we had a meeting for the Turk states organization, we just had the G20, the APEC, etc., etc. So there was a lot of other very high-level meetings, and they have some point what is actually they are like same. They are talking about the same, that we need mutual benefits, we need mutual dialogue, respect, and peace, and we have to have dialogue. Just like here in the Eurasia Forum, we have dialogue between East and West. We have friends from the West, we have friends from the East. So it's a very good platform to have this kind of cooperation and dialogue. That's why the Prime Minister is always saying that Hungary, Budapest can be the bridge between West and East. And these multilaterals, I think these institutions, what are birthing and then became stronger and stronger in the past decades, maybe they have the important point that they don't want to change the whole world order. They are a kind of reform package for the world order. So they don't want to change it, and they don't want to build up a new world order. They want to like to have an other kind of world order, and they are talking about it for in the past 70 years, as I have already mentioned. And but in the history, we also can see in cycles that the multilateralism was always a very important for the international relation, for the international cooperation, as we have mentioned, that the multilateralism is benefit for everybody, and actually the globalization, what is a Western-minded and a Western idea, it is about the multilateralism cooperation. But nowadays, as I have mentioned, the Western, they are afraid of losing their first place in the world order. So they are doing a kind of blocking system. And now, as I have mentioned already, we are living in the Cold War 2.0. And we have to work on it. we have seen a lot of successful cooperation in the Asian countries, and Hungary also would like to be the bridge, so we are participating in. However, in the Western media, in this Western media bubble, we get a lot of they are saying we are the black sheep in the European Union, or the Trojan horse of Asia in the European Union. So the Western country, they're giving us a big pressure in Hungary, but we believe that the dialogue is the most important between the countries, and we have to work for it. And also the governor has mentioned that there is 3 very important megatrends in the future: the climate change, what the colleagues has already mentioned, the technology, as we are living in the Industrial Revolution 4.0, so it's also a very important, the technology. And also you can see up that the capital, and we are very glad that we also have a lot of members from the financial institutions. So in this in the Eurasia Forum, we also can discuss about these 3 megatrends and hope we can find some good way for the future.
Yeah, thank you for this optimistic words at the end. I guess one challenge here is that, again, how these global institutions, including the UN system institutions, how do they interact with the regional alliances and unions and so on? So as we know, for example, WTO doesn't recognize some of them, doesn't talk to them. So that is really the challenge. And perhaps, Mr. Yu, you could maybe follow up on that and say which forms of regional cooperation and partnerships are efficient and effective now in the current situation, and how do you think they can develop in future?
Right. Okay. So like many other parts of the world, in Eurasia, there's a plethora of regional multilateral institutions such as ASEM, Eurasian Economic Union, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Central Asian Regional Economic Cooperation, etc. They all play some useful role in fostering economic cooperation among the participants. But my view is that large-scale multilateral institutions will become less useful and less effective in the future for a variety of reasons, one of which has to do with great power conflict and rivalry. So when great powers decide not to cooperate, it's just very hard to sustain and operate multilateral institutions. Now, having said that, I think we should not confuse multilateral institutions with multilateral principles and norms. So we can have bilateral agreements and at the same time promote and implement multilateral norms and principles. And in this regard, I think, especially in this part of the world, the Belt and Road Initiative can be a useful instrument. So take, BRI, what is it? It's essentially a bunch of bilateral economic agreements with China as the main funder, right? And if you're a recipient country, you can set the right kind of norms and principles in a specific BRI project that are designed to promote multilateral principles and norms, right? So, so I know that Hungary, as I understand, is taking a step deeper in this right direction. My advice to the Hungarian government, if they care to listen, is you must negotiate hard, right? It cannot be just taking Chinese money, Chinese companies arrive, right, using Chinese labor, Chinese steel, manufacturing stuff, right, in Hungary. What you have to go after is there's got to be specific transfer of knowledge, technology, and training. The aim is to bring up domestic capabilities in Hungary to a level where you can utilize that, right, enhanced capabilities for future opportunities. Beyond bilateralism, I think we might see greater number of what we call minilateral initiatives popping up. So in Asia, we already are witnessing this. The Quad, the AUKUS, the US, Japan, Australia trilateral, the US, Japan, South Korea trilateral. These are specific minilateral institutions that are aimed at resolving specific functional needs or to deal with very specific issues. So we might see the emergence of these minilaterals. Now here, one problem that people have not mentioned, but I've been noticing is in Asia, all these minilateral initiatives are constructed and driven by great powers. And as such, I've already mentioned that great powers have become more egoistic and more unilateral. Then these unilateral initiatives either extend or magnify the egoistic and unilateral great power approach, right, to international affairs, which in turn will weaken the operation of multilateralism. What I would like to see is middle powers, that we discussed middle powers yesterday, some sort of unilateral initiatives coming from middle powers among them, right, that go beyond great powers. And this is one area where we've not seen enough effort made by various governments that are non-great powers.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kushimov, how is this in Central Asia? So you have the knowledge from the region. So how does this happen in Kazakhstan, and how financial institutions are engaged in these regional alliances, partnerships? Are they free to engage in them? Is it working, or are there obstacles that you are facing? Tell us more about that.
Thank you. I think kind of in Central Asia, we have a lot of discussion about this dynamic of great powers versus middle powers, and Kazakhstan being regional leader in kind of many facets, economically, politically, kind of, I think, taking up this role of engaging other middle powers in and being much more responsible in kind of pushing the right policies. From the financial point of view, I think if we take not political but financial multilateral institutions, what we see that they don't always do enough to develop the right policies within the countries in our region. So I think one reason for that, this is the definitely lack of the focus. I think when they were established like 60, 70 years ago, the focus of this multilateral financial institution was on the poverty. I think today there should be a much more shaped kind of shift of this focus toward the challenges that you mentioned, and specifically I think on the climate as well. Because I think lack of that focus is very evident today. Second point, I think what also countries within that region feels that still the lack of capital. And while you have a big project and big goals on the agenda, the countries in Central Asia or kind of in the Eurasian continent, they still have difficulty of access to the capital and the cost of the capital. The countries that don't have hard currencies, they don't issue hard currencies, the cost of capital is still very high. And I think there should be these joint points when you shift the focus, but also you kind of implement the right tools, and all the multilateral financial institutions, I think, do have these tools to minimize or lower down the cost of capital for the countries within the region. And I think that will have a different dynamics. Coming back to this role of middle powers, and I think this is a very important point, I would like to say, to give a couple of examples. One, that if we take COP meetings, apart from, I think, 2 or 3, they all been in a regional leaders' capitals or middle powers capitals. And I think that is a very good example why these countries need to have a greater role. I think they just took up on themselves to be much more responsible world players these days. Secondly, on some of the global issues on the climate agenda, if you analyze the way the countries voting on these initiatives, again, you can see a very evident trend, how middle powers play on that agenda. And again, they show remarkable responsibility towards these global challenges that we face today. Third point that I wanted to mention on that for us in Central Asia, of course, the regional issues are much more closer to home, and therefore this cooperation with our neighbors and neighboring countries, they are much more in the domestic politics and domestic discussion than global issues. And I think based on that, we have much more cooperation between countries within Caspian region, Central Asia, and then Greater Eurasian continent. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing in particular at the cost of capital aspect. So the cost of capital is the highest where it's needed the most, and so this paradox of our time is, of course, hindering development of many nations. And Belt and Road Initiative, in that sense, is an attempt to actually overcome that. And Ms. Wang, would you tell us, please, how your institution, how your fund interacts with and supports Belt and Road Initiative?
Okay, so BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, so was announced by President Xi in Kazakhstan and also in Indonesia. As our professor from National University of Singapore has just mentioned, so the main mandate is to promote multilateral cooperation and to promote economic development of those host countries. We are a very young institution, so we are only 10 years old with $40 billion with capital. I mean $40 billion plus 180 billion RMB. And our main mandate also is to enhance economic cooperation under BRI. And by now we have committed more than $25 billion, I mean total projects, and we have finished more than 100 projects all over 70 countries. The philosophy we keep is inclusiveness, openness, and also mutual benefits. I will touch 3 points. First, we mainly do equity investment. So in many countries, they have debt financing from MDBs and also from commercial banks. But in some countries, especially infrastructure investment, there is a lack of equity. So we mainly provide equity investment. And in our portfolio, more than 80% of our portfolio is equity investment. And second, we will see the detailed, the actual needs of the host countries. For example, some are advanced economies, and we invest in like education and also healthcare. For those countries, they are undergoing industrialization, and we will invest in manufacturing sectors, like so in some we say cars and also such kind of factories. And in some countries, so they need a lot of investment in infrastructure. So we could invest in like roads or ports or power station. And in this world, and there is a very large need of renewable energy. And by now we have invested 7 gigawatt in renewable assets in Middle East and also in Southeast Asia, in Latin America. The third one I would like to touch is that, as our professor has just said, besides from the capital we can invest, what else we can provide? Expertise or other knowledge sharing. And I can recall one project we invested in Central Asia. In that project, starting from the first time we signed the agreement, we asked for balance sheet of international accounting standard. But this country has just started the process of opening up and reform, and of course, at the beginning, they could not do that, but we asked them that you should do that. And after 3 years, and they are changing from their own country's accounting standard to international accounting standard. In the process, I think we could be some help. And this is one case I can recall what we can do, except for only providing capital. Of course, capital is very important, but we can also do something else. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for this insight. We have something like 10 minutes left in this panel, and let us try to still have another round of questions, but I ask all panelists to please keep your answers very short, and you can watch the time on the screen, as you know. So just continuing on this, my question to Mr. Horvath again is, how can we develop, or how can investment develop into infrastructure in Eurasia?
Yes, first of all, in the Eurasia connectivity, the infrastructure connectivity is one of the most important projects to improving it. And as from the view of Hungary, we can see in the history that we usually had the east and west railway stations or railway lines. But as the BRI and the Belt and Road and the Chinese cooperation came, we do have now and building up north and south line by the Budapest-Belgrade line. And it will be a big opportunity for the Central Europe region too. So it's a big help for our region for developing and strengthening the bilateral trade, economical cooperation, etc., etc. So I think the infrastructural cooperation is also very important, but we don't have to forget that as the keywords of the success of the Eurasia Forum, the talent, knowledge, technology, and the capital. And also I would like to use my last few seconds for advertisement. We are publishing the Eurasia magazine. You can get it at the door outside, but also online you can read it. You can read a lot of interesting interview, such as we just had interview yesterday with other colleagues from these panels, and more than welcome to read our magazine and step out from the Western bubble and have a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you for this advertisement. I'm sure many people from the audience will use this opportunity. Mr. Yu, we heard several times in this conference already terms like nearshoring and friendshoring. So do you think it's really happening in Eurasia now? Is it really a long-term trend, or is it more a discourse at the political level and in the level of these circles of journalists?
Okay, I think it's more than political discourse. We've seen a significant trend towards onshoring, nearshoring, or friendshoring since 2019, when the US-China strategic competition really began in earnest. Rising tariffs, favorable subsidies, COVID-induced supply chain disruptions, economic efficiency, and great power competition between US and China all contributed to this effort to reconfigure global supply chains. And I think this trend will intensify under Trump 2.0, although to what extent he will push this remains to be seen. I think what the United States is trying to do here is to create a club of like-minded and trusted partners and reconfigure global supply chains as much as it can within that club. Right? So the aim is pretty obvious. The first one is to reduce dependency on China, especially Chinese manufacturing. But more than that, another aim is to impose cost on China and test the resilience and efficacy of China's political and socio-economic system, because after all, this is a hegemonic contest between the two largest powers in the current system. Now, what does this mean for the rest of the world? I think it means that the size of global economic pie will shrink, so there will be less to go around for everybody, which is not good, and that's why we are here to find some ways to resolve this. But not everything is all gloomy. I think depending upon how you position yourself in this US-China strategic competition and in the process of reconfiguration of global supply chains, there might be some benefits falling in your way. So therefore, what every government should do. And there's no one size fits all solution here. So what every government should do is to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of their own, figure out the vulnerabilities and potential risks that they face, and take a specific position. So position themselves in this ever-changing geopolitical landscape. Then there will be some benefits for them. So in the next few years, I guess we will find out which governments are smarter and which governments are not so smart.
Let's all find out. To change the topic back to financial institutions and their policies, Mr. Kushimov, you mentioned already the role of standards and in green transition. Perhaps a few more words in that direction. What are you working on right now in this field?
Yeah, I think kind of when we speak about standards and, taxonomies, especially in ECG and in green area, for a lot of financial practitioners, that is a nightmare. And I think it will be so for some time. It's kind of Wild West time or period of establishing it itself. So I think for another several years, there will be numerous different standards developed, and I think there will be competition between them. However, I do believe that after that period of time when everyone will try and develop their own, the connectivity and the need for cross-border cooperation and cross-border projects will bring it down to kind of to the size or to the number of these standards that is kind of more digestible for practical financial needs. And as I mentioned, we try to kind of play the role in that through trying to promote model taxonomies within the region. So yeah, I think this is the world today, that you will have plenty of standards. It's an ECG like with electricity sources. It's still, you need, if you travel at least 5 countries, you need to bring 3 different chargers with you. So that will be the same for the next 5, I think 6 years. Yep.
Interesting, thank you. Ms. Wang, you have the last remarks here in this session. Tell us about successful examples of collaborations and partnerships that your institution forged recently, and perhaps the lessons that you want to share for others from those.
Okay, thank you. So I will just give several cases and examples. First, for bilateral cooperation, and we have a cooperation mechanism with INA, Indonesia Investment Authority, and we commit 20 billion RMB and investing in Indonesia in renewable sector, health sector, and also digital economy. And I think today, Master has also announced a cooperation with us just today on Friday. And for multilateral cooperation, we have one successful project in Uzbekistan. It has just announced COD, I think just several weeks ago. It's a first, we say, it's a natural gas power station, and with PPA, with the Uzbek government. And this project has got financing from AIIB and also from EBRD. And then with equity investment from us and from ACWA, a Saudi Arabian power company. And also they have the Chinese CPC. So it's kind of a case of multilateral cooperation. And the last, we also cooperate with those big fund managers in the world, like Blackstone, KKR, and also some European big names like EQT, Cinven, and Actis. And we cooperate with them to invest in, we say, third parties, and in a lot of countries in Europe, and also in Africa, and also in Asia. And this time we come to Hungary, and we are looking at several opportunities. And we hope that we can finish one deal next year in Hungary. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for these updates. Very interesting. And with that, our session comes to an end. We could have talked much more, I think, about these very interesting topics, and I hope we can continue this dialogue maybe next year. And thank you to the speakers for sharing with us your insights and experience. And thank you, the audience, for listening to us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Rovanskaya, for asking the right questions, and thank you to all the panelists for their valuable inputs during this panel. Now that we have closed our multilateral cooperation session, it's time for a lunch break. During the lunch break, we are pleased to offer an optional program for those who are interested. You may choose to attend a special screening of The Foundation, a movie about MMB, which was released in honor of the central bank's 100th anniversary this year. The screening will begin at 1 p.m., 1:00, like the 100, in this conference hall, providing a unique perspective on the century-long journey and achievements of our institution. We hope you will enjoy the lunch break and the movie. Thank you. See you back soon.
As the world grapples with the urgent need to transition towards a low-carbon and sustainable economy, financial mobilization remains a significant challenge. According to the G20, the world needs to mobilize at least $4 to $6 trillion per year for its transition towards a low-carbon and sustainable economy. In developing countries, however, less than half of their sustainable investment demand is met, largely due to the lack of capacity in developing policies, products, and projects for sustainable investment. Capacity Building Alliance of Sustainable Investment, or CASI for short, was launched during COP28 in December 2023 as a global platform to address the knowledge and capacity gap. CASI's mission is to effectively aggregate and distribute sustainable finance and investment-related knowledge worldwide by leveraging resources of our global network of members. We aim to train 100,000 individuals by 2030 with a focus on emerging markets and developing economies. As for contents of CASI's learning programs, we focus on the key building blocks of sustainable finance, including green and sustainable taxonomy, sustainable disclosure, policy incentives, innovative products, ESG ratings, environmental and climate risk management, and green project origination. CASI offers a range of learning programs, including in-person events, monthly seminars, learning programs which will issue certificates, as well as tailor-made capacity building services. CASI was initiated by the Institute of Finance and Sustainability, a Beijing-based nonprofit think tank specialized in green finance, or IFS for short, and now has a membership of more than 50 global institutions from all major continents of the world. Our members represent financial institutions, MDBs, NGOs, associations, universities, and service providers. Our membership is still growing. The precursor to CASI was Global Green Finance Leadership Program, or GFLP, initiated in 2018, which was run by IFS. Over the past more than 5 years, the GFLP has organized and supported over 30 capacity building events, attracting more than 4,500 participants from more than 70 jurisdictions. Joining hands with member and partners, CASI hosts monthly seminars or webinars to dynamically respond to the evolving landscape and needs of sustainable finance, to facilitate knowledge sharing and experience exchanges with emerging markets and developing economies.
My name is Márton. I'm the president of Institute of Finance and Sustainability and former co-chair of G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group.
I'm Mark Franklin, president and CEO of CFA Institute.
I'm Hannah Tao from Silk Road Fund.
I'm Danny Alexander, Vice President for Policy and Strategy at the AIIB.
I'm Kenneth Hui, Deputy Director of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority Infrastructure Financing Facilitation Office.
My name is Marisa Drew, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Standard Chartered Bank.
I'm Jenny McInnes from HSBC.
It's my great honor to be elected as Chairman of CASI by its Steering Committee. I firmly believe that with CASI's strong international network of resources, we can play a key role in enhancing sustainable finance capacity on a global scale, especially for emerging markets and developing economies.
With CASI, we are offering the opportunity to those emerging markets to gain insights from global experts, stay ahead of the trends, and master sustainable financing.
We very much support the capacity building programs organized by CASI. We need to work together to create more bankable green projects.
Capacity building is close to our heart, and we're happy to join hands with members across the globe.
We believe CASI is very important because in the markets that we operate in, oftentimes they are early on their journey in sustainability, and the more that we can do to help educate, all the better for all of us in the sustainability ecosystem.
We know there is a big financing gap, especially in emerging markets and developing countries. We're therefore delighted to be supporting the CASI initiative.
Here we finance innovative, inclusive and sustainable projects. The policy and institutional work that CASI do is vital to creating a positive environment for those projects. Welcome to CASI.
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 For researchers like myself who look at the political economy of finance and financial technology, Shanghai is definitely an important location and one that shouldn't be missed. So Fudan being at the heart of Shanghai, both at the academic and market side of finance, makes a big difference.
Shanghai is definitely a very good destination for foreigners to visit this country and to learn about China.
It's been really great to meet so many people across the Fudan community, from undergraduates to graduates to postdoctoral scholars and professors. And I think the space here at FDI is wonderful to work at. I'm able to work at different coffee shops in front of the lawn around Guanghua Lowell in this building, and it's just been a wealth of people, ideas, and places here that I've been very grateful for.
As a university academic, there's a danger that we would stay in a small circle of people who think the same way, that we live in the library. FDDI as a think tank was very useful for me to meet people in the business sector, meet people in political sectors, and I could bring their opinions into my research.
The international environment for the job market is very difficult at the moment for early career scholars, and I really wanted something that would give me an edge. And in fact, the FDDI program provided me with that edge.
What I liked about FDDI was that I had a chance to meet other experts of several areas, and also the audience at my two presentations was quite interactive, which I liked. For example, at my presentation about how the Belt and Road Initiative impacts the energy security of China, we discussed security issues involved.
We have a very unique style of work here. It's very friendly, academic, highly recreational and interchanging. For example, we go out and see places, we share our experiences of life together, we take photographs, we take videos, and then we laugh.
So at FDDI, there was a lot of freedom to work. We had good facilities. The staff was really, really helpful. I think if you really want to do any good visiting fellowship in China, FDDI gives you the best.
It's pretty clear that, that China and Shanghai and Fudan University is a very, very, very dynamic place. Have never experienced such a dynamic institution as Fudan University, and that's also encouraging for me. China is a leading power in economy, but becoming very soon, I guess, also a leading power in academic research and teaching.
The program is an epitome of the diversity in Fudan. We have brilliant people from both academia and industry, and we have achievements in both research and practices. Diversity is always the key word here in FDDI, and that is why how we win top talents and inspire great ideas here.
Connecting people, sharing knowledge.
Connecting people, sharing knowledge.
Connecting people, sharing knowledge.
you.